So, hi, today I'm delighted to welcome Nathan Reuby and Alex Oliver, co-founders of Select Global Events, a commercially focused B2B events organizer that focuses on launching and managing shows from inception through to established global brands. Or at least that's what it says on your website. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Dan, you all right?
I'm good, thank you. Everyone has to have a mission statement, right? And then within 6 months, it sort of disappears. Before we get into what we're here to talk about in the main, which is Silicone Expo, which is your launch next year in the US, it's always good to understand how people sort of came about into the events industry and what their background is. So starting with you, Nathan, who you are, where'd you come from? A bit like Blind Date back in the 80s, isn't it?
Yeah, so Nathan Reuby, CEO at SGE. I mean, Alex and I, to go right back, we worked together 10, 12 years ago in the hospitality sector. So that's where we cut our teeth really in business. We were, I was a front of house, I was serving plates. Alex was a really bad chef, serving really bad food. No, but I think for us, it stemmed there. We met there, we worked together. So our sort of love of customer service and whatnot started there, and then I moved into the event sphere with Smart Shows 5-6 years ago, and now here we are. Yeah, so
there you go. Yeah. There you go. And so Alex, your chance to get your own back on Nathan for that sly dig at your culinary expertise.
Yeah. For the record, I was an excellent chef. But,
what was your signature dish?
Oh, too many. I was that good. Don't get make desserts for you, honestly.
Yeah. So tell us, Alex, with similar sort of story of how you ended up at events?
Yeah, similar. Yeah, I was my first ever job was in the Merchant Navy. I was a cook in the Merchant Navy on cargo vessels, and then came shoreside, and then to having children at a young age, coming into getting out of working weekends and long hours. I went into recruitment when Nathan was my boss. We did an excellent job for a year before he left me and went to London. And then similarly, I had a friend. I just stumbled into the events industry. I was asked if I could work on a show that I knew nothing about, an industry I knew nothing about, but I gave it a go and excelled at it. And then Nathan joined that company. And for years, we've always talked about how we can work together and really what that was going to look like. And that was the inception of Select Global Events and ultimately Silicone Expo.
Yeah, interesting, because it's always about relationships, isn't it? Because you can't do these things on your own, and actually, you get to a certain point in your life, you think, right, if I want to start something, who am I going to do it with? And people and trust is really important when you're starting a new venture. So that's great to see. So obviously we're coming through the pandemic. You guys launched the business, I think you said at the turn of the year, but obviously you'd thought about it for a few months before. For people listening, do you think the times of sort of crisis, if I can call it like that, is sometimes a good time to start new things? Nathan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that we found an opportunity, and without sort of being crass, I think we're in a good position to sort of negotiate or to bargain on certain things which we might not have had pre-COVID. So yeah, during the travelling times, I think people wanted to start doing business again, and we just came out of nowhere and said, right, we've got this show, we want to book couple of years here, we want these hotels, and I think we could use that. We leveraged that, I think, to a degree.
Sure. Do you agree with that, Alex? As sometimes it's just there's just no right or wrong time to start something, especially if you've got what you think is a solid idea.
Well, my view is that it was an unprecedented opportunity for us. The events industry was shut down for whether it be wrong or right reasons, and we had time, and we worked really hard outside of our working hours. We had respective jobs, and we worked very, very hard and took advantage of everything we possibly could during the pandemic to be able to deliver a show that, I've said it many times, I think when it comes to business is an unprecedented opportunity to get back to meet to meet, sort of face to face.
Sure.
Shows. It's 2022. I think 2021 will still be a little bit edgy, but 2022 I think is going to be one of the biggest opportunities in trade show history, and we took that risk ultimately.
Sure. It's interesting because I do a lot of these programs, and many people that have set up new ventures, either as part of their existing business or a completely new business, mentioned exactly what you said. This period gave them time to have a think. So whilst their business has stalled or stopped or whatever, that actually gave them time, which normally you don't have because you're on that hamster wheel of doing a show after show after show, or any other business. So Select Global, before we get into talk about specifically Silicone Expo, Nathan, just tell us about the sort of mission, I guess, over the short to medium term.
Yeah, well, we'll be launching shows. First one, Silicone Expo, which we're branding. So we want to really get established with that, really forge a community in that sector first, build around it. But Alex and I have got other plans. We're currently investigating other launches to do globally. So I think for us, we want to sort of launch a number of shows, get those running, manage them. But that's our plan. 3 to 5 year plan at minimum at the moment is to have X amount of shows, build the company up, and enjoy what we're doing. I think that's the main aim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Alex, tell me about Silicone Expo. From an outsider looking in, I don't know anything about silicon. But I'm sure there's a good opportunity there. So maybe talk to me about how you came up with the idea for the show. Maybe you just saw a gap in the market, wasn't being served, in the best possible way.
Sure. Yeah, it was ultimately it was Nathan's idea. He called me one day and said, "Look, I think I've got an idea for a show." Nathan and I, more so Nathan, is very risk aware. So we researched and researched and researched and researched, and ultimately. This is the right time. There are loads of things that Dow did, for example, in the 90s that are made out of silicone that aren't ready to go to applications, and now is the time. And it's between a 30 and $60 billion industry that doesn't have, its dedicated, showcase commercial event. And that's what Silicone Expo is going to represent. It's going to be in a way where those manufacturers are now looked for, rather than exhibiting at other shows or vertical shows, etc., where they're hoping to meet the right people. Our job is to make sure that they're being looked for, and it's taken off very, very, very well. It's we're certainly ahead of where we thought it was going to be. And it's certainly I'm a veteran of 7 launches, and this is by far the friendliest and most successful launch so far. Fingers crossed.
Excellent. And so Nathan, if you can add to that, just in terms of where it is, when it is, the content that people can expect to see, and the types of exhibitors.
Yeah, well, I think firstly, following from Alex, silicone is everywhere. I mean, it's probably on your phone. We're probably sitting on it. It's probably on our keypads. So we're learning every day. We're learning more and more about the applications of this material. It's vast. So there is huge scope. So just following on from that, the actual event itself is going to be June 21 to 23 in Detroit, 2022. So we're looking for 180 odd exhibitors, I would say 4,000 visitors from across the whole supply chain. I mean, the end user target group says 15, 20. You can think that the obvious ones, automotive and aerospace. But then you have, I don't know, if you walk around your house, you'll see all of the kitchenware products. You might have one of those squidgies in your shower, which you get all the water off. That's made of silicone. So all of these end user groups we're targeting to come to the show. So there's never been done before.
Sure. And Alex, when you're launching a show, and as you said, you're a veteran of, I think you said 7 launches. Just in summary, again, if people are listening, I like it to be sort of educational. What typically do you have to do first when you're looking into a new market to launch a show? How do you go about doing it?
First of all, is due diligence, checking up on yourself, making sure you're doing the right thing. I'd have to use Select Global Events as an example, because the amount of effort went into looking around the industry to making sure that we have a viable event. That's what it is. It's due diligence, not just coming up with an idea and throwing a website out. Making sure you've got a coherent route to market for people that could be spending money with you. It's very, very important that's clear from all of your literature.
Sure. And I guess, Nathan, partnerships in these sort of niche communities is really important. Can you tell us about some of the partnerships that you struck up for the show?
Yeah, 100%. I think the most fun, when we look back in a few years, the best thing we did was form an advisory board early on. So we forged an advisory board. We've got 15 members from across the supply chain, and they're working on our behalf at the moment. They're pitching it to their suppliers. They're building up our credentials as well, helping us. I would say fundamentally that's been our biggest partnership so far, getting those together.
Yeah, it gives you instant credibility and authority.
It does.
But obviously they have to believe in you as individuals. So I guess your track record of launches and the success of that is important as well.
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, it would maybe have been harder if no one knew of Alex and I from the beginning. I think that would have been a tougher ask. But again, I think it goes back. We've got a product here. We've got a model which these guys have never had presented to them before. So I think they're also really engaged because of that.
Sure.
So yeah, the advisory board going back, I think that's probably the best partnership we could have done so far.
Sure. And why the US, Nathan? I know you guys have done launches and shows before in the US, but why the US and I guess why Detroit?
Two things there, I would say. Firstly, looking at the way people do business globally, Alex and I felt it was maybe a safer bet to start a show in the US. I know that sounds crazy being based in the UK, but the mentality of the US guys doing business, it was probably a bit easier for us to start there. I don't know why. I think, Alex, you might be able to sort of elaborate on that in a minute, but that's, I think their mentality towards doing business in adversity. So obviously with the lockdowns and with COVID, felt it might have been a bit easier there. And Detroit, really, we've got connections in the Midwest. So from the material shows that Alex and I have worked on previously, I think having a reputation, hopefully a good one, has helped.
Sure. And so, Alex, I guess, you're sitting here in Brighton, very nice. In the UK, you've got a show in Detroit. I guess you've got contractors, suppliers, partners on the ground that are going to help you deliver this. Can you sort of bring that to light and how you work with them?
Yeah, again, during the pandemic, we managed to negotiate. I mean, pretty much everything's in place. We have an operations director out there that's contracted select global events that negotiated a lot of the times along with myself and Nathan. So yeah, again, over that period where we had that time to do so, I was managing shows in the UK. So from 5 till 10 every day, we was speaking to the US about organising the very best deals. And the very good thing about the pandemic was the fact that when you picked up the phone and spoke to people, you're speaking to managing directors. That everyone else was furloughed, and again taking that opportunity to do so. But and also Detroit's a great location because it is on the doorstep of 3 of the biggest buying groups of silicones within automotive. So
you handle sales, marketing from the UK. I guess you do ops management for the UK, but you're saying you've got some suppliers over there that obviously will help deliver.
Yep.
And in terms of sort of challenges that a company might face trying to launch a show in the US, what are the main sort of obstacles that you have to overcome, Nathan?
Not being able to travel at the moment.
Yeah.
It's been, I mean, we've had multiple trips planned, paid for, booked up. We haven't been able to go to, and that's been a real annoyance for us actually, because there's people that we need to meet. Everything's in place contracts wise, but it's really now for the sales campaign. For us getting out there, pressing the players face to face is really important. And from my previous launches in the first year, that's really helpful. For us, the main thing now is just waiting for the agreement for us to be able to fly.
Well, hopefully that will happen soon, because obviously the Americans are, I think this week, able to come to us. So hopefully that'll be reciprocated. So assuming everything goes well and it's a great launch, would you plan to sort of roll out the Silicone Expo in different cities in the US or in different countries? What's the sort of the plan going forward, if possible?
Well, we do have plans. At the moment, we're not 100% sure on which angle to take.
Yeah.
So Alex and I still do need to discuss that. We've got a couple of options. I think for us, fundamentally, Detroit, good few years there, get the brand known by everyone, just get it set, put our flag in the ground, and then I think we'll see what happens from that. But I think we just need to get to a show first. So it's just hoping, get out there in June 22.
Sure, absolutely. And so, Alex, obviously you're based in Brighton. How big's the team? Is it just you two? Do you have other people that you're working with? Tell us about the rest of the team.
No, well, in the initial, it was just Nathan and I. We now have Taryn, who's our marketing executive, who's fantastic, not out of the events industry, so really fresh. We love her. Jamie joined us. He's also come from Smart Shows. He's our sales director.
Yeah.
We've got Shirley in design. We've got Lisa in ops. I think we've got seven staff, Nathan, and 1 US base.
Yeah.
And lots of companies, both established and like well established and have just been established, are talking about omni-channel and digital engagement to build up a community with the communities that they serve from a physical show. Obviously, you've got just under a year between now and the physical show. Nathan, what other things are you doing for that community between now and then?
Yeah, really good point. Yesterday we started our very first channel. We got a YouTube channel now, and we started a thing called the Silicone Sessions. Which, so kind of similar to this category. But what we're doing is we're just having an informal chat about certain topics, relevant to that company, and we put it onto YouTube. And it's a really, really nice way of just staying engaged. Yesterday we had one, might not mean much, but with regards to conformal coatings, for me, from general layman, I didn't know much about it, but afterwards I did. So they're very informative but fun. So for us, we're starting that process. So in the build up to the show, we'll have loads of stuff. We're going to do virtual webinars, virtual roundtables, just keeping everyone engaged and chatting. Yeah,
and also it's a good way to acquire potential delegates to the show, obviously through registration and potential sponsors as well. Okay, so that you're also members of SISO, Society of Independent Show Organisers. How important do you think associations for the event industry in general are, Alex, in terms of advocacy for the industry?
Incredibly important for a number of reasons. One, the support you get, the promotion you get as a company, but for us, it's the credibility we get as organisers.
Sure.
From the start. We joined SISO, I think the first week, Nathan, of when we got our first office, and being accepted was an absolute honour. I've got to say, to get that kind of credibility over that side of the pond for us as organisers is going to open doors for us in the future and during this campaign. So for us, it's incredibly important.
Sure. And I guess finally, Nathan, the trade show industry is obviously opening up all around the world. There's still a bit of uncertainty because of different variants of COVID and what's going to happen in the future. What are your thoughts generally? Obviously you're launching a show, so they're going to be positive, but what's your thoughts about how the industry is going to bounce back?
I think positive. Yeah, the conversations we're having with people, 9 times out of 10 is they just are itching to get back to face-to-face, itching. I don't think I've had one conversation where someone says you're mad doing this. Why are you doing this? It's very positive. But okay, this is a manufacturing sector, so it could be slightly different to maybe some services.
Sure.
But yeah, I think overall, very positive. But I think one thing we should definitely try and maintain is really keeping the communities together. So I think that's really important moving forward. Now we've had, the advent of Zoom and virtual stuff over the last 18 months, I think we should use more and more as well.
Sure. So. And Alex, some final thoughts from you in terms of the industry as it returns.
Yeah, I think 2022, as I said before, is just going to be one of the best trade show years ever. I think there's going to be some challenges in place. I think the backlog of trade shows that haven't been able to happen, find new dates, is going to be very, very challenging for people. But yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what Nathan said. From all the conversations we've had with Reuby, the buying groups, the advisory board, the exhibitors, our prospects, everyone cannot wait to get back to trade shows.
Excellent. Well, listen, Nathan Reuby and Alex Oliver, co-founder of Select Global Events, we wish you the very best of luck with your launch in Detroit next summer, the Silicone Expo, and we look forward to seeing a lot more information and news about it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot.